Sarkaria Commission, 1983, Government of India, Consolidated Recommendations, chapterwise, read by Ramani. Chapter 6, Emergency Provisions, Recommendation 1. Article 356 should be used very sparingly in extreme cases as a measure of last resort, when all available alternatives fail to prevent or rectify a breakdown of constitutional machinery in the state. All attempts should be made to resolve the crisis at the state level before taking recourse to the provisions of Article 356. The availability and choice of these alternatives will depend on the nature of the constitutional crisis, its causes and exigencies of the situations. These alternatives may be dispensed with only in cases of extreme urgency, where failure on the part of the Union to take immediate action under Article 356 will lead to disastrous consequences. Recommendation 2. A warning should be issued to the errant state in specific terms that it is not carrying on the government of the state in accordance with the Constitution before taking action under Article 356. Any explanation received from the state should be taken into account. However, this may not be possible in a situation when not taking immediate action would lead to disastrous consequences. Recommendation 3. When an external aggression or internal disturbance paralyzes the state administration, creating a situation drifting towards a potential breakdown of the constitutional machinery of the state, all alternative courses available to the Union for discharging its paramount responsibility under Article 355 should be exhausted to contain the situation. Recommendation 4A. In a situation of political breakdown, the governor should explore all possibilities of having a government enjoying majority support in the Assembly. If it is not possible for such a government to be installed, and if fresh elections can be held without avoidable delay, he should ask the outgoing ministry, if there is one, to continue as a caretaker government, provided the ministry was defeated solely on a major policy issue, unconnected with any allegations of maladministration or corruption, or is agreeable to continue. The governor should then dissolve the Legislative Assembly, leaving the resolution of the constitutional crisis to the electorate. During the interim period, the caretaker government should be allowed to function. As a matter of convention, the caretaker government should merely carry on the day-to-day government and desist from taking any major policy decision. B. If the important ingredients described above are absent, it would not be proper for the governor to dissolve the assembly and install a caretaker government. The governor should recommend proclamation of president's rule without dissolving the assembly. Recommendation 5. Every proclamation should be placed before each House of Parliament at the earliest, in any case, before the expiry of the 2-month period contemplated in Clause 3 of Article 356. The sixth recommendation: the State Legislative Assembly should not be dissolved either by the Governor or the President before the proclamation issued under Article 356(1) has been laid before Parliament and it has had an opportunity to consider it. Article 356 should be suitably amended to ensure this. Recommendation 7. Safeguards corresponding in principle to clauses 7 and 8 of Article 352 should be incorporated in Article 356 to enable Parliament to review continuance in force of a proclamation. Recommendation 8. To make the remedy of judicial review on the ground of mala fides a little more meaningful, it should be provided through an appropriate amendment that notwithstanding anything in Clause 2 of Article 74 of the Constitution, the material facts and grounds on which Article 356(1) is invoked should be made an integral part of the proclamation issued under the article. This will also make the control of Parliament over the exercise of this power by the Union Executive more effective. Recommendation 9. Normally, the President is moved to action under Article 356 on the report of the Governor. The report of the Governor is placed before each House of Parliament. Such a report should be speaking document containing a precise and clear statement of all material facts and grounds on the basis of which the President may satisfy himself as to the existence or otherwise of the situation contemplated in Article 356. Recommendation 10. The Governor's report on the basis of which a proclamation under Article 356(1) is issued should be given wide publicity in all the media and in full. Recommendation 11. Normally, President's rule in a state should be proclaimed on the basis of the Governor's report under Article 356(1). Recommendation 12. In Clause 5 of Article 356, the word and occurring between subclasses A and B should be substituted by are. Chapter 7. Deployment of Union Armed Forces in a state for public order duties. Recommendation 1. The existing relationship between the Union Armed Forces and the state civil authorities and the manner of their functioning as prescribed in the relevant Union laws and procedures do not need any change. However, before the Union government deploys its armed forces in a state in aid of the civil power otherwise than on a request from the state government, or declares an area within a state disturbed, it is desirable that the state government should be consulted wherever feasible and its cooperation sought, even though prior consultation with the state government is not obligatory. Recommendation 2A. Each state government may work out, in consultation with the Union government, short-term and long-term arrangements for strengthening its armed police. The objective will be to become largely self-reliant in the matter of armed police, so that the assistance of the Union armed forces will be necessary only in cases of very severe disturbances. B. While advising, and if necessary, assisting a state government in strengthening its armed police force, the Union government may take into account the following factors. 1. The degree of confidence that the people of the state, particularly those living in the disorder-prone areas, have in the state police, armed and unarmed. 2. If large-scale public disorders are frequent, the causes thereof and the steps which the state government should take on the social, economic, and other fronts to prevent disorder, mere strengthening of armed police may not achieve the objective. 3. The inadvisability of a state, particularly if it is a small state, expanding its armed police if it cannot be fully utilized throughout the year, and 4. The feasibility of more efficient utilization of the state police. Recommendation 3. A group of neighboring states may, by consensus, have a standing arrangement for the use of armed police of one another in case of need. The Union government may devise, by consensus, the regional groupings, keeping in view contiguity and logistics, and encourage states to participate fully. B. The zonal council would be the best forum for achieving consensus of the states within a zone for devising such an arrangement. C. The Union government will, under this arrangement, monitor, coordinate, and control any interstate movements of state armed police. It's only when it's not possible to meet the requirements of a state from within its group that the Union government will decide whether to draw from any of its own paramilitary forces or from armed police battalions belonging to one or more states outside this group. D. A beginning may be made immediately to plan the use of armed police interstate within a region. E. This arrangement will be only for meeting special demands for short periods from the state in a group. The armed police will not merge or get integrated but will remain distinct as hitherto. The fourth recommendation, the various measures recommended by the National Police Commission in their seventh report for improving the effectiveness and morals of state armed police are commended for the consideration of state governments. Recommendation 5. The problems of cadre management, mobility, promotion prospects, etc., of police personnel in small states, especially in the northeastern region, need to be carefully examined by the state governments in consultation with the union government. Recommendation 6. There should be a system of interchange of the officers of the state armed police forces with those of the Central Reserve Police Force, the Border Security Force, and other union armed forces. They should also have common regional training centers so as to facilitate better exchange of techniques and information and a more integrated system of operations when the Union armed forces are deployed in aid of the civil power in a state. Recommendation 7A. Adequate finance will be needed by state governments for augmenting and strengthening, by way of better equipment, more vehicles, etc., their armed police battalions. The Union government may, therefore, examine immediately the question of financial assistance to state governments for this purpose, after taking into account the grants that are already being made available to them for the modernization of their police forces. B. The extent of central assistance to be made available to state governments for the above purpose during the next plan period may be specifically referred to the next Finance Commission. Recommendation 8. It is essential that there should be advanced planning of deployment, including logistics of the Union Armed Forces and state armed police battalions. For this purpose, the Union government may get an expert study carried out for evolving such a system of planning. Chapter 8, All India Services. Recommendation 1. The All India Services are as much necessary today as they were when the Constitution was framed, and continue to be one of the premier institutions for maintaining the unity of the country. Undoubtedly, the members of the All India Service have shown themselves capable of discharging the roles that the framers of the Constitution envisaged for them. 2. Any move to disband the All India Services or to permit a state government to opt out of the scheme must be regarded as retrograde and harmful to the larger interests of the country. Such a step is sure to encourage parochial tendencies and undermine the integrity, cohesion, efficiency, and coordination in administration of the country as a whole. 3. The All India Services should be further strengthened and greater emphasis given on the role expected to be played by them. This can be achieved through well-planned improvements in selection, training, deployment, development, and promotion policies and methods. The present accent on generalism should yield place to greater specialization in one or more areas of public administration. Training and career development policies should be geared to this objective. Disciplinary control should aim at nurturing the best services traditions and relentless weeding out of those who fail to make the grade. Finally, there should be greater coordination and periodical dialogue between the authorities in the Union and the state government who are responsible for the management of these services. Recommendation 2. There should be an element of compulsion in the matter of deputation of officers of all India services to the Union. The informal practice followed by the state governments of obtaining the consent of the officers who are to be sent on deputation should be given up. 2. Every All India Service officer, whether he is a direct recruit or a promoted officer, should be required to put in a minimum period under the Union government, and for this purpose, the minimum number of spells of Union deputation should be laid down for direct recruits and promoted officers separately. 3. State governments should offer officers for Union deputation only after screening them. The Union government may lay down a screening mechanism and the criteria to be followed for the purpose by every state government. An officer so offered should not be rejected by the Union government except on grounds to be communicated to the state government concerned. 4. Among those on deputation to the Union from a state, and among those serving in the state, the number of insiders and outsiders should be almost equal. Recommendation 3. It should be ensured through strict observance of the tenure principle that the services of the best among all India service officers are not monopolized by the Union government but are also readily available to the state governments to whose cadres they belong. Fourth recommendation, the Union government may dissuade state governments from using the powers of transfer, promotion, posting, and suspension of all India services officers in order to discipline them. Recommendation 5. While examining an appeal against the suspension of an All India Services officer, the Union government should invariably consult the Union Public Service Commission and accept its advice unless palpably wrong. Such a provision may be included in the All India Services Discipline and Appeal Rules 1969. Recommendation 6. No change is necessary in the present disciplinary procedures relating to All India Service officers except in the matter of suspension as recommended in para 8, 19, 5 above. The seventh recommendation, state governments with the assistance of the Union government may evolve modern and more enlightened systems of incentives for the officers of the All India Service cadres. 2. The political authorities in each state should strive to create an atmosphere of mutual trust and cooperation vis-a-vis the civil servants by ensuring fair and just treatment to them and encouraging the qualities of honesty, fearlessness, independence of judgment, and dedication to duty. An efficient, disciplined, and contented service assures of its prospects as a result of diligent and honest work is sine qua non of sound administration under a democratic regime. Recommendation 8. There should be regular consultations on the management of All India services between the Union and the state governments. For this purpose, an advisory council for personal administration of the All India services may be set up. 2. The council may have the Union Cabinet Secretary as its chairman and Union Secretaries in charge of individual All India services and Chief Secretaries of state governments as members. 3. The council may be serviced by the Union Department of personnel and training. Recommendation 9.1. The Advisory Council recommended in para 8.19.8 will advise the Union and the state governments. It should meet periodically and regularly and suggest solutions to the problems referred to it by the Union and the state governments. 2. The Union Department of Personnel and Training may take follow-up action on the recommendations of the Council and secure the decisions of the Union government. 3. The Council may set up study teams of experts for examining specific problems. 4. Matters which the Advisory Council is unable to resolve may be placed before the Intergovernmental Council. Recommendation 10. The Advisory Council may address itself to the problems of the type raised by the Estimates Committee and which recently have been referred by the Union Government to a special committee. Recommendation 11. The following cadre management problems should be specially examined by the Advisory Council on a priority basis. 1. More precise criteria have to be evolved for the encadrement of posts, which will ensure fair promotional prospects for the other state services and at the same time prevent undue expansion and consequent dilution of quality of the All India services. 2. Whether a state government may be given full power to make temporary additions to an All India service cadre. 3. A system of postings and transfers has to be evolved for All India service officers so that field work keeps alternating with policy making and advice till such time as the officers reach the senior-most levels in the state and the union governments. Also, an officer appointed to a field post should continue in that post for a minimum period to be prescribed. Any deviation from the prescribed period should have the approval of a committee of the Council of Ministers. 4. Uniform and rational policies have to be drawn up to adequately compensate officers working in difficult areas and for assisting such of them as wish to settle down permanently in the states to whose cadres they belong. 5. Promotions at the state and the union levels of All India service officers have to be coordinated and conflicting situations avoided. 6. To ensure the All India character of these services, state-wise reviews have to be prescribed so that outsider-insider ratios are maintained at a desirable level. 7. State-wise career development plans for the members of the All India service cadres, which inter alia offer scope for greater professionalization, have to be evolved. 8. Problems of inadequate promotion and deployment opportunities in small states and formation of multi-state or zonal cadres to meet these problems need to be examined. 9. Periodical review of the system of performance appraisal of members of All India services should be evolved. Recommendation 12. As recommended by the Estimates Committee, the Union Government may persuade the state governments to agree to the constitution of the Indian Service of Engineers, the Indian Medical and Health Service, and an All India Service for Education. Recommendation 13. To constitute All India services in sectors like agriculture, cooperation, industry, etc. 1. To begin with, a pool of officers drawn from the Union and the various state governments may be created in a sector. 2. These officers may be made available for posting for fixed tenures and with attractive special pays in governments other than their own. And 3. After the pool system is worked successfully for a few years, steps may be taken to constitute an All India service in that sector. Recommendation 14. The question whether there should be a uniform age of superannuation for the employees of the union and the state governments may be considered after appropriate studies by Intergovernmental Council recommended in Chapter 9. Chapter 10 Financial Relations Recommendation 1. Under the present circumstances, duties on all the items covered by Article 268 do not appear to be a buoyant source of revenue amenable to frequent revisions. Since basic circumstances do not always remain constant, the Union government should, in consultation with the state governments, periodically consider and explore the revision or imposition of these duties. The revenue raised from these duties should be separately specified in the budget and other relevant publications. Recommendation 2. The monetary limit of Rs 250 per annum, fixed 37 years ago, on taxes that can be levied on professions, trades, callings, and employments, entry 60 of List 2, should be, in consultation with the states, revised upwards immediately and reviewed periodically. Recommendation 3. Taxation of agricultural income is a sensitive matter. Both the union and the state governments are not inclined at present for a change in the constitutional provision in regard to entry 46 of List 2. Many problems have been highlighted by the union and the state governments in connection with the levy of such a tax. Nonetheless, in view of its potential, the question of raising resources from this source by forging political consensus and the modalities of levying the tax and collection of proceeds, etc., would require an in-depth and comprehensive consideration of the National Economic and Development Council. The fourth recommendation. By an appropriate amendment of the Constitution, the net proceeds of the corporation tax may be made permissibly shareable with the states, if and as Parliament may by law so provide. This would have the advantage of enlarging the base of devolution so that in the revenues of the states there would be greater stability and predictability in future. Further, being an elastic resource, states would benefit from its growth. Recommendation 5. Consequent on inclusion of corporation tax in the divisible pool, adjustments will have to be carried out by suitably bringing down the shares of states in income tax and union excise duties. Recommendation 6. The surcharge on income tax should not be levied by the union government except for a specific purpose and for a strictly limited period only. Recommendation 7. The organic linkage in policies and measures adopted by different levels of government in resource mobilization and expenditure must be duly recognized. This, indeed, is the crux of union-state financial relations. An expert committee with suitable representation from the states may be appointed by the union government to recommend desirable directions of reforms in taxation and inter alia consider the potential for resource mobilization by the union and the states. The report of the committee should be placed before the Standing Finance Committee of the National Economic and Development Council for consideration. Recommendation 8. Substantial expenditure is incurred by both the union and the state governments on schemes which have come to be known as populist measures. It will be in the best interests of the concerned governments to take explicitly into account the high opportunity cost of such schemes and to examine whether any important programs of development are compromised due to such diversion of scarce resources. Recommendation 9. It's necessary that a comprehensive paper on direct and cross subsidies covering both union and state governments is prepared by the Planning Commission every year and brought up before NADC for discussion, since the increasing burden of subsidies has a direct relevance to the availability of resources for the execution of the plan. Recommendation 10. The present division of labor, which has developed over the years between the Finance Commission and the Planning Commission, is that the farmer advises on the non planned revenue requirements and non planned capital gap in certain sectors where the problem is clear and the numbers are reasonably sure. The Finance Commission has recommended capital resource devolution also, only to a limited extent. The present division of responsibilities between the two bodies, which has come to be evolved with mutual understanding of their comparative advantage in dealing with various matters in their respective spheres, may continue. Recommendation 11. The Finance Commission cell division proposed to be located in the Planning Commission should continuously monitor the behavior of states' finances. It should also estimate annually the deviations from the norms evolved by the Finance Commission. The Planning Commission would then be able to bring before the National Economic and Development Council annual reviews indicating, among other things, the deviations from the forecasts of Finance Commission and the reasons for the same. This would afford an opportunity to the National Economic and Development Council to monitor effectively and evolve consensus on the mobilization of resources and contain the non developmental expenditure. Recommendation 12. The Finance Commission division should, in cooperation with the states, organize comprehensive studies on trends in growth of public expenditure in the states in the light of the findings of the previous Finance Commission. The studies conducted by the Finance Commission division should be available well in time for the use of the next Finance Commission. Recommendation 13. There is need to further strengthen the Finance Commission division. It would result in much closer coordination between the Planning Commission and the Finance Commission if this division were to work under the general supervision of the member in charge of financial resources in the Planning Commission. Such an arrangement would also make available to the Planning Commission data and analysis on various parameters relevant for resource discussions for the plan and reviewing of the finances of the Union and the states. Recommendation 14. Finance Commission should draw experts for assisting them in their work from various parts of the country. It would be advantageous if suitable experts are drawn from the states also for staffing the Secretariat of Finance Commission. Recommendation 15. The step taken by the Union government to initiate a process of consultation with the states in finalizing the terms of reference of the Finance Commission is in the right direction. Any consultation to be meaningful should be adequate. However, there is no advantage in formalizing the same through change in the constitutional provisions, which would introduce undue rigidity. Nonetheless, it is desirable that this healthy practice of informal consultation with the states in this matter should continue. Recommendation 16. Consideration of adequate flow of funds to the backward regions in the states would necessitate creation of expert bodies like the Finance Commission at state level also. Without such an organization at the state level to effect regional distribution, skewness will persist in large pockets, even in advanced states. State planning and finance boards may be set up at state level to take an objective view of resources to be devolved to the districts. Recommendation 17. Since the 6th Finance Commission grants for upgradation of levels of administration in the states are being provided, the crucial role of administrative organizational support in the backward areas is a sine qua non for making the investment effective in consonance with the accepted policy of reducing regional disparities. It may even be desirable to provide in the special terms of reference of the Finance Commission to make available finances with effective monitoring arrangements to fill up the interstate gap in administrative capabilities. This vital aspect should continue to receive due consideration of the Finance Commission. Recommendation 18. It is, indeed, unfortunate that the 8th Finance Commission's final recommendations were not implemented in 1984-85, which caused serious financial problems in some states. While the recommendations of the Finance Commission are not binding on the Union government in a technical sense, the expectation is that, as far as possible, these would not be departed from without compelling reasons. It's to be hoped that in future there would be no occasion for such departure. It's necessary that the time schedule for the completion of the Finance Commission's work is so drawn up that it can reasonably submit its final report 4 to 5 months before the beginning of its period of operation. Recommendation 19.1. As much of the information gathered by the Finance Commission, as well as the detailed methodology followed by it, is of public interest, it should be got published, say, within 6 months of the publication of the report to enable informed discussion and responsible research in the relevant spheres and better appreciation by the state governments. 2. In addition, it will be a healthy practice if the observations and suggestions made by the Finance Commission on matters other than the terms of reference of the Finance Commission are also considered expeditiously by the government and a comprehensive statement placed before Parliament, subsequently indicating its views and actions taken. The 20th recommendation. It's a matter of serious concern that even after a lapse of about 5 years, no legislation has been brought in for giving effect to the intent of the constitutional amendment enabling levying of the consignment tax. The Union government should bring in suitable legislation in this regard without further loss of time. Recommendation 21. There are complaints that the yield from certain cesses levied along with Union excise duties under special acts of Parliament have remained outside the divisible pool of resources. While it may become necessary for the Union government to levy such cesses in view of the special needs, their application should be for limited durations and for specific purposes only. Recommendation 22. The scope for raising additional resources to any considerable extent on items covered by Article 216(9) appears to be limited. An expert committee should be constituted to inquire into and review from time to time, in consultation with the states, the operational feasibility of the scope for levying taxes and duties included in Article 216(9) and the complementary measures the state governments would be required to take. Recommendation 23. The Constitution should be suitably amended to add the subject of taxation of advertisement broadcast by radio or television to the present entry 92, List 1, and Article 269, 1F. Recommendation 24. The Union government should signify its acceptance of the Finance Commission's recommendation in regard to the grant in lieu of the railway passenger fare tax also, along with other items, while placing the explanatory memorandum before Parliament. Recommendation 25. The Finance Commissions take into account the expenditure liability of the states with respect to dearness allowance, etc., and make a provision for the same. But inflation increases both outlays and revenues. The Permanent Secretariat of the Finance Commission should make an annual review of the situation. If in any year the net burden of the states seems unduly heavy, Planning Commission and the Union Ministry of Finance should jointly evolve appropriate relief measures. Recommendation 26. The reviews of royalty rates on minerals, petroleums, and natural gas should be made every 2 years and well in time as and when they fall due. Recommendation 27. A subcommittee of finance of the Standing Committee of NADC may be constituted consisting of Union Finance Secretary and the Finance Secretaries of various states and Union territories. It will consider all such matters calling for coordination of economic policies as may be entrusted to it by the NADC or its standing committee. This body will report to the Standing Committee of the NADC. Since Planning Commission would be providing the Secretariat support to the NADC, the same may be extended for this body also. This will ensure expert consideration of various aspects of the problems and adequate consideration of the views of the Union and the states, Union territories. The role of this committee will be deliberative and advisory and helpful in forging a consensus of financial matters. Recommendation 28. The distinction made by the 7th and 8th Finance Commissions in providing a more favorable flow of central assistance for floods, cyclones, etc., vis-a-vis a drought situation may continue. Recommendation 29. 1. The central team to assess the damage caused by natural calamities should invariably be headed by the advisor in charge of the state in the Planning Commission, as was the practice in the past. 2. In the event of a natural calamity, relief must be given immediately, a procedure which enables states to expeditiously provide necessarily succor and relief to the affected people should be evolved in consultation with the states, along with suitable norms in regard to the scale of relief. Formulation of standard formats for submission of memoranda by the states will greatly help the Union in dealing with requests of various states urgently and on a uniform basis. Recommendation 30. In a calamitous situation, the states should have a reasonable discretion to make interdistrict or intersectorial adjustments to allay the apprehension that the expenditure pattern adopted under the stress of urgency may not find approval. Norms in regard to items of expenditure which are to be incurred immediately, for example, relief by way of issue of food grains, clothing, and rebuilding of shelters in the event of floods may be evolved by the Union and communicated to all state governments. Recommendation 31. Relief assistance should extend beyond the financial year. The assistance required till the next June July should be decided in the beginning itself so that relief works can be properly planned and executed. Recommendation 32. There appears to be a tendency to bring in non productive schemes and programs under the capital head in order to expand the plan size. In future plans, for reasons of financial propriety, this sector, though small, has to be weeded out of the capital budget and put under the revenue budget. It's better to tackle the situation at this stage whilst the problem is marginal. Recommendation 33: the rationality of transfers from the Union to the states would involve more of revenue transfers to the less developed states with the lower repayment capacity and weak financial base. In contrast, keeping in view the needs of development in the advanced states, a suitable mix of budgetary and non budgetary access to capital resources may be allowed to them. The logic is that such states are in a better position to service commercial borrowings. Recommendation 34: the flow of capital from various sources to the states and their allocation among them should form part of an integrated plan. This task may be attended to by the Planning Commission in consultation with the Ministry of Finance and the Reserve Bank of India and got approved by the National Economic and Development Council as part of plan financing. Recommendation 35: the Union government should give its consent freely to states for borrowing from banks and financial institutions for periods less than 1 year under Clause 4 of Article 293. Recommendation 36: the Union government has now allowed the states' public sector units to raise funds on merit by floating bonds. In practice, the considerations relating to merit of the state's enterprise should not put them to any disadvantage vis-a-vis the Union government's undertakings. Recommendation 37: the system of tax free municipal bonds should be introduced in this country. Recommendation 38: treatment of small savings loan is a matter of judgment by the Finance Commission in relation to the overall debt burden of the states. As long as small savings keep increasing and there is a surplus every year after repayment of due loans, the Union is not called upon to repay any loan not already covered by the net transfer principle. If and when the position changes in any year, when the outgo is greater than the inflow, the states would be responsible for their share of the net small savings collections. If a formula is adopted for such recoupment of revenue from the states, the recommendations of the Finance Commission will be workable. This aspect will have to be examined by the National Economic and Development Council. Recommendation 39: any problems in the working of the arrangements concerning flow of development finance from the financial institutions should be looked into by the Subcommittee on Finance of the Standing Committee of the NADC. Recommendation 40: no change in the existing procedure of channeling external aid for projects is suggested. However, much misunderstanding would be avoided if, at the time of consideration of the 5 year plan, all relevant factors taken into consideration in this regard are placed before the National Economic and Development Council. Recommendation 41: the seasonal range of weekly ways and means demand compared to the prescribed limits should be carefully studied every year for the preceding triennium in the light of price trends separated for each state by the Reserve Bank and taken into account in refixing quarterly ways and means limits for the state. The period for overdrafts should be extended from 7 to 14 days in view of the prevailing time lag in collecting relevant information from various treasuries. Simultaneously, steps should be taken to modernize the treasury system. Recommendation 42. The following two proposals may be considered by the Union government. A. Free foreign exchange to the extent of a small fraction of a state's annual budget should be placed at its disposal. This will introduce flexibility, which will help reduce much of the present irritation. B. In each state capital and in the headquarters of remote but unimportant districts of the bigger state, a designated officer of the State Bank of India or some other nationalized bank should be given powers of a deputy controller of foreign exchange of the Reserve Bank of India in case an officer of the Reserve Bank itself is not located there. This will go a long way to help the local public, especially small and medium businessmen. Recommendation 43. It will be useful if the Union government appoints an expert team to look into the special difficulties of the people in remote states and districts in matters like the issue of shares, bonds, licenses, permits, etc., for which they have now come to New Delhi, and suggest measures for delegating the powers to some officer or agency under its control at the headquarters of each state and remote but unimportant districts of the bigger states. Recommendation 44. Flow of direct assistance and refinance through cooperatives and the other institutions to agriculture and private enterprises in other sectors does not generally fall within the ambit of union state financial relations. However, given the overall development and equity considerations, it is too important to be ignored. Undesirable politicization of the cooperative system, thus leaving untapped substantial institutional finance which could be available for development, has been noted by expert studies. In the context of consideration of institutional finance to the private sector, two aspects become pertinent. One is that scarce capital resources in our country carry a high opportunity cost. Therefore, their optimum use is a must. The second aspect is that notwithstanding the preferential and concessional finance facility offered, people in the less developed states have not been able to avail of the institutional finance to the desired extent. It is necessary to develop organizational capabilities and enterprise urgently in such states.